Hello everyone! This E3 Bethesda legitimately surprised me. Not for the games they announced, but rather in the way they made those announcements. That is, after they did their initial, oh look at us, these are our developers, we're so proud of them, they're members of our family, you should empathize with them, because they aren't just people making a product for you to buy. That drivel that's designed to remove the separation of this is a corporation trying to sell you a product. You know, they try to soften you up and such. Either way, once that initial preamble was done and then they finished with the non-Bethesda game studio stuff, that's when things got rather interesting. You see, Bethesda's had a pattern of announcing things in the past. And Bethesda has clearly stated, not even a couple of years ago, that they wanted to reduce the time between announcements and releases. So people speculated why that was the case, why Bethesda really wanted to reduce that time between announcement and release. But to me, it was obvious that the longer people speculate about a product, the higher their expectations of what that product will be. Until the product launches, or so much time has passed that we end up with a Half-Life 3 type situation where nothing you put out will ever be up to the standards that people were expecting. For years, people have been waiting for an Elder Scrolls 6, and speculation about Fallout 5 happened within months of Fallout 4's release. This expectation of Bethesda the community had created was Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Fallout, Elder Scrolls. So when Pete Hines came out to definitively say Bethesda Game Studios isn't an Elder Scrolls and Fallout studio, they are a game studio and they were going to make other games, they were trying to make way for that Starfield that everyone picked up on. You know that idea that Todd Howard posted on the IBM users Google group all those years ago? When he used to post stuff about the ongoing development of Elder Scrolls Adventures Redguard? That's a speculation that's been running rampant ever since that Starfield trademark was taken out. Where am I going with all this? Well, Bethesda surprised me. Not with the Rage announcement, that was pretty much garbage, and I had to mute the music, not only because it physically pained me, but also because the livestream viewers asked me to. Doom 2, or Doom Eternal, didn't surprise me either, but it's a cinematic trailer, so we saw nothing other than, oh, it's going to be Doom 2, I guess. No indicator of quality or anything like that, however. No, what first surprised me was their joke, where Todd Howard came out and admitted the meme.
But we know that most of you came here for one thing. I think it's to see where we're putting Skyrim next.
Now, Skyrim looks to the future, to its ultimate version.
Alexa, play Skyrim.
You're level 57 and see a tall snowy mountain.
Now, Skyrim and life become one.
A mud crab scuttles towards
First
you.
Roda!
I didn't catch that.
First Roda!
I didn't quite catch that.
First Roda!
Your shout echoes all the way to Sovngarde.
What happened?
Introducing Skyrim, very special edition. Also coming soon to Etch-a-Sketch, Motorola Pagers,
Oh, shit.
and your Samsung smart refrigerator.
Oh, that's cool.
Came out and admitted the meme of them releasing Skyrim several times. They ran with the joke and they released Alexa Skyrim app, which is real, by the way. You can get a skill for Alexa, which will add a Skyrim scenario to Alexa's conversation. This was an important part that legitimately shocked me. Bethesda's PR has awareness. Normally when there's some negative stuff floating about, a games company will try to ignore it, sweep it under the rug, or create some other hype to outweigh it. But Bethesda attacked it with humor. They got out in front of the problem, attempted to delegitimize the real grievances of them just re-releasing Skyrim a bunch of times, and turn it into a joke, which was a hilarious joke, by the way. But it caused the actual problem that existed to not seem so bad. Now, what would drive them to do this? So why would they take all this time to address those memes with humor? Well, they saw last year's E3, and even their most loyal YouTuber, a guy who worships them practically, at least in the character he plays on his channel. A man who once said, if you say Fallout 4 was a bad video game,
if you didn't like Fallout 4, that's great. If you like Fallout 4, that's great. But to call it a bad game is honestly disrespectful.
This man came away truly disappointed and disillusioned, with everyone collectively rolling their eyes at the Creation Club, loading up Skyrim Special Edition and Fallout 4 with microtransactions. If their PR hadn't stepped up this year, and they had operated under their original mission statement, where they were reducing the time between their announcement and release, we'd have seen Fallout 76 from the former Battlecry studios, and the Blades app from the Montreal studio, and that's it. We would have seen nothing else. No jokes about releasing Skyrim on 2 more platforms. No Starfield, no Elder Scrolls 6 announcement. But by breaking their original policy and doing something, which I'm guessing was quite scary for Bethesda Game Studios to do, to announce their games very far in advance, they've managed to turn this guy into this. We don't actually know how far Starfield is away, and the reason is because they aren't releasing any details about it other than quick concept art, teaser, and that's it. I don't think they even consider that the real announcement, because people have known about Starfield for ages, but by acknowledging, and that's what I'm going to call this, I'm going to call it the acknowledgement image, because aside from some minor animation, it had nothing to it. It was an acknowledgement image. I don't think they're even prepared to show us a vertical slice of gameplay yet, even if they wanted to, at least at the time of making this video. I think they were pressured by a need for better public relations to turn him into him, and to collectively disarm the ever-mounting sarcasm the community has been building for some time. What we do know is that Todd Howard expressly said that Elder Scrolls 6 will be after Starfield. It has been confirmed that Elder Scrolls 6 is now in pre-production. For those of you who don't know, that is the document sharing and concept art creating stages, before we actually start with the programmers and the levels and things like that. We aren't at the stage of actually making the game. We are at the stage of making the plans to make the game. Like design documents. Pre-production's when we draw those up. So as I said, they're just in the formative stages of creating concept art. And that's what you saw in the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer. It was concept art. You could have removed the words Elder Scrolls 6 from that trailer, and it could have been a Far Cry game. The trailer showed us nothing. It's an acknowledgement that Elder Scrolls 6 is coming, because a lot of us, myself included, were having doubts that Elder Scrolls 6 was ever actually coming due to Elder Scrolls Online's profitability for their parent company, ZeniMax Media's subsidiary, ZeniMax Online Studios. It's all one interesting organism, the ZeniMax creature, with the Trump holding company on the board of directors. It's kind of funny. If it wasn't for that horrible reaction to last year's E3, I'm sure they would have held on to it until they had a more substantial Skyrim-esque trailer to show off, to shock the world with. But they knew they didn't have that kind of time. Elder Scrolls Online had taught them that not every Elder Scrolls fan will want Blades, a mobile freemium game, which will serve as a dungeon crawler, apparently. Not every Fallout fan will want Fallout 76, a multiplayer game. Fallout 4 was close enough where they're comfortable, but the sarcasm and memes regarding Skyrim they'd reached critical mass, at least for the Elder Scrolls side. So instead, as I mentioned earlier, like good PR, they ran out in front of it and diffused it with humor. If you're gonna tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they'll kill you.
I read on the internet that our games have had a few bugs. And that sometimes it doesn't just work.
Using humor can transform what people perceive as real issues into jokes, allowing you to flip the narrative and make it your own.
I did. I read it on the internet, so it's true.
Seeing this action is what shocked me, not the releases. See, this is the sort of thing I expect from politicians or sales folk, but they've really stepped out and showed how good of a salesman Todd Howard can be. Not every project lead makes a good public face, but they've got both in Todd. A man who rose up from tech support to project lead and now is the go-to frontman for selling Bethesda products to the E3 viewers. After Radiant AI, Fallout 3 has 300 endings. See that mountain, you can climb it. It just works, settlements being optional, so on. People are still willing to believe what he says. He's got charisma and confidence to step up and convince people that his next product is going to be the best thing ever. However, I'd guess where we're going now, announcing things so far in advance, talking about Starfield and Elder Scrolls 6, he doesn't look that comfortable talking about the memes that have come up about Bethesda bugs and Skyrim being released on everything again. He didn't look that comfortable. I could be wrong here, and perhaps I'm just perceiving things a little off from reality. We all have our own unique way of looking at things. But from my perspective, he looked kind of uncomfortable when he was saying those lines. I'd kill to know how much of what he says in these press conferences and interviews were pre-written, corporately sanctioned lines. Was any of it original to him? Did he say any of that in the moment? Or was this something he was told to say? And most importantly, was this something he wanted to say at all? Or was this something he was being forced to say as part of his job? The gaming industry is one famous for NDAs or non-disclosure agreements. When you get hired on or have your contract renewed in order to work with these large companies, you agree not to talk about the job at all unless you are specifically directed as a part of your job to talk about it. Now, we've never seen Todd Howard's employment contract, but I'd be willing to bet he's not allowed to freely talk about things that he might want to. Having worked with several people, I'm not allowed to talk about certain things until they release, which, if we followed the pattern of possibility, could be never. Of course, certain states say that non-disclosure agreements without time limits are not legal, but that depends on what state you're living in, so you have to check your local laws for that. For the most part, non-disclosure agreements without limits are just normal, which is kind of depressing. It means that when you absolutely know something, you can't tell anyone about it, even if it would be beneficial to the project, even if it would be beneficial to yourself and possibly even the company, unless the company itself, by way of your direct superior, tells you to do it, in which case there'd be an exemption for the non-disclosure agreement. A good example of a non-disclosure agreement being really funky was when the Nintendo Switch was originally announced and people saw Skyrim being played on the Switch. Lost their shit because they saw Skyrim was announced for the Switch. They immediately went to Bethesda for comment, and Bethesda said that they were very happy to have worked on the Switch trailer and that they could not confirm Elder Scrolls for the Switch at this time. And so the games media ran with these huge banners that said in all caps, Elder Scrolls for the Switch not confirmed. We know through hindsight that that wasn't true. I knew at the time that wasn't true. And a lot of sites and games media tried to make up these big articles explaining why this was not the case. It's not coming out. I knew immediately when I saw that trailer that, yeah, Skyrim for the Switch was coming out. And I knew immediately that Bethesda couldn't talk about it because Nintendo is one of the strictest with their non-disclosure agreements of all. That's just an example of how one company being in partnership with another company can hinder each other because they had to wait for Nintendo to let them announce the Skyrim Switch despite it being all but confirmed in the trailer, just because of some contract wording, some minor line, a provision there. They couldn't say what was true and obvious. My point here, Todd Howard probably isn't free to say what he means, and this was probably a very heavily scripted E3 by way of public relations. I don't think he looked comfortable. I could be wrong. He could have been insanely comfortable. He could have been having the time of his life for all I know. So this is just an estimation on my part. But Starfield being announced early, no details appearing about it, this would probably mean more than 1 year off. I'd give Starfield 1 to 3 years until it's released. The year of its release, we'll actually see details in a vertical slice of gameplay. And then 3 to 4 years after that, we'll see Elder Scrolls 6. Assuming, of course, they didn't start up another studio or a sub-studio in order to work on both at the same time, which is very unlikely, considering how this company has worked in the past. Remember that although Bethesda Game Studios has technically diversified, technically expanded, one of their branches is still just Battlecry, and it's doing Fallout 76. One of their branches is still just Montreal, and it does support work and mobile games. So unless they have expanded beyond that, I don't see Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield being worked on at the same time. I don't see Elder Scrolls 6 and Fallout 5 being worked on at the same time, unless the former Battlecry Studios, now part of Bethesda Game Studios, decides to take on Elder Scrolls 5. However, when studios split up like that, then the management has to split up as well. Because when a manager oversees multiple projects at the same time, you end up with a concept type deal with games like Mighty No. 9, where the teams are mostly autonomous, but then they have this interfering force that keeps forcing them to recorrect. It's not a good thing when it happens. And if there isn't that shared management, assuming you just give another studio the reins completely, you can have something amazing like Fallout New Vegas, or you can have something completely alien to the original vision, to the point where, let's use the Final Fantasy VII Remake as an example. CyberConnect, which are the people who did the Dot Hack games. I'm a huge fan of the Dot Hack franchise, by the way. Anyway, Concept, the company that made those games, they started working on the Final Fantasy VII Remake. A little ways into production, they were removed from the project, apparently, and looking at all the assets and the engine and everything that had been built, Square Enix looked at this and said, we have to start over, and they scrapped the whole project and started the Final Fantasy VII Remake over from the start. That's an example of what happens when the vision isn't done properly, when you don't have the oversight. Look at all the people who wanted a Morrowind, Oblivion, or Skyrim-like experience out of Elder Scrolls Online. That wasn't even part of the consideration. The entire concept of the game was different. And if you have an Elder Scrolls 6 and a Fallout 5 going at the same time, maybe Todd Howard works on the Elder Scrolls 6, and then Fallout 5 gets this completely new guy who doesn't necessarily have the same ambition. And that is the risk we're looking at with them making multiple games at once. See, the reality is they're in a pickle here. If they start going full EA and Activision, releasing a Call of Duty or an Assassin's Creed every year, by the way, Assassin's Creed kind of stopped doing that for a reason, you very quickly run into diminishing returns. People start seeing your franchise as being hollow retreads of the same thing over and over and over, instead of looking forward to experiencing that old game system in a new way. They look at it and say, this is basically the same game with slightly different story elements. Why are you doing this? It's called franchise fatigue. People see your franchise as a hollow thing, instead of a labor of love that takes years to produce, as they currently see the Elder Scrolls and Fallout. Now, for all Bethesda seems somewhat unskilled in the use of the upgraded Gamebryo engine they call the Creation Engine, for all the bugs we frequently see, they are not lazy in the respect of building the world. They lovingly craft these tiny sandboxes smaller than some public parks I've been to. And I have a blast romping through them for tens of hours before I attach possibly hundreds of mods onto them and have a blast for a few thousand hours. But it's when I attach those mods onto the game that I feel I'm getting the full Bethesda experience. And here's the thing, there is no modern game company that does exactly what Bethesda does. I once had a conversation with Camelworks where he said he would love it if the Elder Scrolls would put out yearly releases. I dread that possibility because of franchise fatigue. Franchise fatigue is something that will kill. That's pretty much it. Bethesda surprised me, legitimately, not with their announcements of Elder Scrolls 6 and Starfield, but in the way they adapted to community criticism and their public relations, their messaging department, as it were, came out in front of the issues and made light of them, turned them into humor. Those issues are still there, by the way. Those who were waiting for me to do the deep dive into the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer or the Fallout 76 trailer or what have you. The me who used to watch trailers over and over and pick out small details, anticipating the product, that me died in my early 20s. Right now, I see the 10 things you may have missed or 5 facts from this trailer. I look at those and go, no thanks. Then I go and look at the extensive list of games I haven't played yet, as well as the current list of games that I'm currently playing. And I say, when the new games come out, we'll play them. But I've got these to play first. Currently on my list of games that I'm playing, I've got a Morrowind run, where I'm playing a Tribunal Temple-orientated character. I've still got my ongoing Skyrim run. I've been playing for over 200 hours now, where I'm playing as the Relic Hunter. And Elder Scrolls Online, I've created a High Elf Nightblade with the Aldmeri Dominion, and I'm trying to do all of the quests in the game that are possible to do, and I'm writing down my thoughts on each of those main quest lines in order to come up with a full and extensive opinion of Elder Scrolls Online. I don't think this is something I would ever do just on my own. Like, if I want to play a casual game to have fun, there are so many other games I'd play than ESO. So this is something I do almost exclusively on live streams, which is fine. But yeah, I've got a lot of stuff on my plate right now, and that's in addition to other work I do on the side. So no, combing over the slightly panning picture that is the Elder Scrolls 6 trailer isn't worth my time. But shit posting on Twitter is. Check out twitter.com/Zarek. And if you want to check out my live streams, you can see them on twitch.tv/Sahakaran. I wanted to do a lot more E3 coverage than I did, but I caught a stomach virus during it. And so now I'm scrambling to catch up on things. Either way, thank you all for watching. Check the links on screen for more content. And I'll see y'all next time with even more things to say about E3. And Bethesda, and upcoming games, and other things. I got a lot of opinions. I'm an opinionated jackass. See y'all next time.